Today on the show, we are talking with Jason Waggoner from ACUTRAQ. This is Steve Rozenberg, and I am the host of the Landlord Survival Show.
This is the Landlord Survival Show. When people stop being nice and shit gets real. You're the landlord. We're here to help. This is a show for what the gurus don't tell you about owning rentals. We're here for you because we're stronger together.
Brought to you by Empire Industries Property Management. Built for investors, by investors. For more information about this show, please visit our website, selfmanagemyproperty.com, home of the ultimate Landlord Survival Handbook.
Now, the Landlord Survival Show with your host, Steve Rozenberg.
Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of the Landlord Survival Show. I am your host, Steve Rozenberg, and today is October 2nd. So we're going to talk a little bit about the first couple days of October and why sometimes it sucks being a landlord on the first couple days of the month if you were like how I used to do it and you do it wrong and you learned all your lessons and you would almost dread the first of the month. First, let me just tell you a little bit about the show. The show is created for investors by investors, and it's set up to really talk to you, the landlord, who is out there in the heat of battle, grinding it out, trying to figure solutions, and really trying to figure out what it is that you can do to build a better mousetrap. Because, I think we all get into real estate at some level or another because we like the idea of real estate. We like the fact that we know that it works. But nobody ever really gives you the playbook for after you purchase it. Everybody has the solution to how you buy them. They have the solution to what you do to get the best deal and what you do to, get the best ROI. But once you close and go hot on the deal and now you own it, what I have found is no one's there to teach you that stuff. And that stuff is the guts of what can make or break you. And, Pete, my business partner, and myself, we created this show. We created a website, selfmanagemyproperty.com, and we even created a manual, the Ultimate Landlord Survival Handbook, of exactly what we do on a daily basis to manage about 1,000 properties all the time to make sure that we can help investors be more successful and get to the goal. Because, I was one of those people that I was buying deals to buy deals. And what I realized was the reason I was failing is nobody put a goal in front of me. No one ever asked me, what's the business plan around this? What's the business model? Why are you even buying this crappy house for $40,000 when it doesn't match your goals? And I learned a lot. And what I learned is a lot of people wanted to put their hands in my pocket to make money off me, but nobody actually wanted to see me be successful. And I think there's a gap there between people that want to make money off of you and people that want to help you be successful. And unfortunately, I think they're few and far between that actually want to help you be successful in real estate if they're not making money on you. And so the guest I have today is very near and dear to us. He's a good friend of ours, but it's near and dear to us because when we first got into real estate, one of the reasons we were failing is what this gentleman does. And we failed miserably at it over and over and over again. And there was times like this time of the month, the beginning of the month, why we hated this time of the month. And the reason we hated this time of the month, very simply, is because that's when tenants were supposed to pay rent. And it was always a guessing game as to whether or not the tenants would pay their rent. And it was, are they or aren't they? Is this going to happen or isn't it? Who's going to skip out? And when we first started, I think Pete and I had maybe, we'll say about 35, 40 properties, and we had about a 30% eviction rate. We were horrible at picking tenants. We would put the wrong person in as quick as we got them out. And the reality is they would probably leave on their own and we just wouldn't know about it for another couple of weeks because we had no systems in place. We had no business model, and we were very bad at picking tenants because frankly, we weren't running it like a business. We weren't doing background checks. We weren't doing anything. And so the first of the month was always a crapshoot as to how many left this month, or how many do we have to negotiate with, or how many do I have to hear, that their family member died again, the same family member over and over again, the same story. And, you a lot of investors can relate because you almost feel like a victim. You feel like you're stuck with them now. You put them in, you don't know what to do. And I think that's why a lot of investors actually get out of the business because, number one, they don't go into it with a business plan. And what they end up doing is they very simply try to kind of patch it together. And that's what we used to do. We used to try to patch it together. And it's not a good place to be. And when you have 35 or 40 of these patched together, it makes for a lot of, we'll call sleepless nights because somebody's responsible to pay those mortgages. And when you're responsible to pay those mortgages and your livelihood is dependent on someone that you put in the property that probably shouldn't have been in the property, but you put them in because of reaction and emotion, that's not good. So I want to welcome my guest, Jason Waggoner. Jason is with ACUTRAQ, and they do tenant screening, we'll say. We'll start with that. So, Jason, thank you so much for being here today.
Love being here. Any chance I get to come and hang out with you guys.
Oh, man. So, how long have we known you for?
About 6 years now.
6 years. 6 years, man. And so we've seen your business grow as you've seen ours.
It's been amazing. It really has. And we, what you guys are doing translates to more than just property management because we look to what you guys do, for how to structure our business and move it forward. We've had eyes on you this whole time. So.
It's a constant. The way someone explained it to me best was it's like building a plane in the air.
Yes,
you're building it as you fly it.
Yes,
and as much as we have plans and structures, sometimes you got to make a hard left turn, and when you got to make that hard left, you got to do it.
Right.
And so that's kind of what we've learned. And of course, we try to run our business as much as we can on policies, procedures. And I think one of the challenges that a lot of investors have is they don't realize that they own a business.
Completely. That's one of the biggest challenges. And when we're talking about home-based landlords, so back through that time period of, because I think when I met you guys, you had roughly 200 to 300 properties.
Wow.
And so it's really taken off and grown. But through the time of the 20 to 30 properties, you guys were hands-on talking to these people personally, I'm taking it?
Oh, yeah. We were, it was Pete, myself. We had this big org chart, but it was our names in all the hats.
Right. And that's what we see the most of in the home-based landlord field is there's always that personalization. You're meeting these people personally to where in a big property management firm, there's an automation, there's a process, you know. So when you get involved in those stories, and I've been doing this for 10 years.
We're going to talk about some of those stories.
Well, and it just, there is emotion there, and we are people. We do feel what they feel,
Absolutely.
Especially when you're standing there and tears are running down their face about what they're going through, where they're at now, and what they're going through.
There's a compassionate level there.
There is, and you generally want to help.
Absolutely.
But like you said, is this a business or am I doing this to help people? And that's what they need to determine right away.
Yeah.
It's your property. Do whatever you want with it. If you want to lose money on it the rest of your life,
right.
That's just a decision you're going to have to make.
Exactly.
But there's a better way.
Yeah, and if you want to be a charity, that's fine, but just know what it is.
Right.
And have the proper definition.
And most people don't. Most people buy that property, you inherit some money or you inherit a property and you think I'm going to rent this out and have some ancillary income, supplemental income, and then you get stuck in these stories and then you get stuck dreading the first through the fifth.
Yeah, And it's funny, I did a Facebook post on this yesterday about the difference between a landlord and an investor. And the landlord is the person that they want to do everything themselves. They want to be the one that goes to Home Depot. They want to meet the applicant and the family and everything, and they want to personally approve them. They want to do it all. They want to be, Superman.
Right.
An investor never leaves his desk. He signs a contract. He has a team go and inspect the property. He has appraisers appraise it. He has a property management company. He does all of that from running the investment property. Right. And that's a mindset issue. And I think the biggest challenge that landlords have, and I was one of them, is landlords don't understand the value of time. And they don't respect their time, and they don't understand how limited it is.
And if you don't, the tenants won't.
Absolutely.
And that's the biggest thing. You get involved in that story, and now they have an in.
Yep.
Now when that time comes around, well, this happened this month, and oh my goodness, my car broke down. I'm so sorry. I'm going to get it to you by the 15th. And then you end up 3 months down the road, and now you're friends with them, and it just...
And now you feel, a lot of times what happens is this path, you go down this path, and a lot of times what I have found is you get to a point to where now you've been pushed off so much that you feel that you have been taken advantage of personally, and now it's a personal problem you have with them. And now you are reacting out of emotion and not out of business.
Completely.
And that's when things go south, when you say things you shouldn't say.
And the thing about it is a lot of applicants, a lot of tenants, they know how to manipulate this.
They do.
They have done it time and time again. And one of the biggest things that home-based landlords overlook are one simple thing: evictions. If somebody's been through a lot of evictions, they know that process better than you do.
Well, it's funny. So Pete used to always say, if you look at their past, you'll see their present.
Right.
You look and see what they've done. They're not going to change their lives. They've been leasing their whole life. We've been a landlord for a couple of years. Who do you think knows the rules better?
Right.
They know. They know when rent is due.
Right.
They know what happens if you don't pay rent. I look at it as, if you go to the gas station to get gas, you can't tell the gas pump, I'll pay you on Friday if you give me gas today. It doesn't work.
Nope.
So they're going, okay, well, who could I push off? And I don't think they do it intentionally. I think they go, okay, well, you know what? I can't push my gas off. I can't push maybe my electric off, but I could probably push the landlord off a couple of days.
Right.
And I don't think it starts intentional, but I think that just becomes, it starts becoming the norm, the accepted norm. And, as the landlord, if you don't basically say, no, that doesn't work, I am a priority. And if you don't pay me, X, Y, and Z is going to happen per the contract. But what happens is a lot of people set a precedent in the beginning. And that precedent of doing that,
they're checking you. They're checking you to see what you will tolerate.
Yep.
What can I get away with?
Yeah.
And there's so many variables that go into it. If you don't have a system and a process, you will not get an ROI. It's just facts. And I've learned a lot of that from you guys when, to know my numbers, to know my data. Yeah. And it's the same way. There's data there. There are numbers there that you can reference.
It's telling you a story if you read it. If you read it correctly, the data is talking to you. You just have to understand. And, a lot of that is a lot of landlords, and again, I was one of them. They buy properties. I would buy properties without a plan. And then you think, I'll just figure it out as I go. I'll just get a tenant and I'll figure it out.
Right.
That's the wrong way to do it. It's like saying, it's like not sharpening your axe. Sharpen the axe all day long, so you have to swing less.
Right.
And so a lot of people, they just buy. And next thing you know, they're going, wow, these properties are no good. They don't even match what I want to do.
It seems so easy. People think, when they get that inheritance or they inherit that property or whatever the case may be, it just seems like, oh, I'll find a renter and they'll pay me money.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, let's, we've been a couple minutes into this. We didn't even tell everybody what you do, who you work for, and let's start with that, and then we're going to dig in a little better.
Well, I am Jason Waggoner with ACUTRAQ, and really the only way I know to describe it is we are the background screening company with a funny name. It's hard
that nobody
to spell,
can spell.
So if you want to check it out, it's ACUTRAQ.com. Or just look up my name, Jason Waggoner, Waggoner, and you'll find me. I've been with the company for 10 years. Started with just the owner, myself, and one office person, and now we've got I think 12 employees and an office in Hollywood, Florida, affiliates all over the country that we do the back end for them. They're their own company, and then we do all the back end work and the verifications and the checks. And so it's just been a really neat process seeing it grow, but surround yourself with good people and you'll pick up some good things. And that's what we've done and been very blessed to have done what we've done. But our whole goal is to educate people, don't be taken advantage of when the information is there. And just to give you a little backstory, I don't think I've ever shared this before on any of the podcasts. When I was 19, I rented a house from my father-in-law. He had 2 rental properties that he had inherited. And we rented from him, we did what we were supposed to do, paid rent, left when it was clean and all that. Well, as we were moving out, one of my friends said, hey, man, my mom and dad are looking for a place. Great, I'll tell my father-in-law. Told him, and I had no idea people acted that way. I come from a town of 800 people. You act like that, you're going to get ran out. Well, this was in Fayetteville, the biggest town next to us, and up in Arkansas. And so they just knew every trick in the book.
Really?
I mean, it was 3.5 months before he finally got possession of his property, and it was trashed. I can't even describe what happened. And right then, he sold both. He sold both properties. He said, I will never do this again. And it didn't have to be that way.
Right.
But he had no process. He had no qualifying material. He had it was just by the seat of his pants, and so that's the thing is get that education from people that have already been through it. You don't have to go through that learning curve.
Yeah, it can be a very sharp learning curve when you're in the heat of it, trying to figure it out as you're going.
And so it's kind of neat that I've ended up in this field after seeing that, years later, and to be able to help people, because we offer credit reports, criminal reports, eviction reports. One of the things that we do different than most background screening companies is we have a staff that does nothing but make verification phone calls to the current landlord, the prior landlord, the employer, references if you want to. What you'll find with references is they're all going to be good for the most part. So
right. It's like a resume. Nobody ever puts what you suck on a resume. They always put the good things, right?
But now the current and past landlord, one of them's trying to get rid of them now. The second one will usually lay it all out there and give you the real story. So it helps to
someone's going to tell you,
cross-verify. But that's what we do, and just really want to help educate people that there's a better way. You don't have to pull your hair out. You don't have to go through those really stressful times just to own rental property.
So, okay, first of all, you've been doing this for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you seen things evolve in the last 10 years? Let's just start with that.
Well, as I was coming on, things were really, more systems were coming online. Technology in the last 10 years has just been unbelievable. And so, I kind of got to learn the old school ways, phone calls and fax machines and things like that. And then we've grown with
kind
technology.
Kind of a changing of the guard.
Right. And to be able to pass information, between softwares and what we do and all the different things that make it go around. But just learning the data behind what's going on. There are so many home-based landlords. For instance, so let's say property management companies, for number's sake, let's say there's 15 million of those out there. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much anybody marketing for something or anything. Everybody's fighting in that same pool and going after those.
Normally about 18, I think it's about 18% of the market in the U.S.
Right. And the rest of those, we're talking 60, 70 million home-based landlords.
Yeah.
And it just, so there's so many people out there that need help, that need that education. And where are they going to get it? Are they looking for it? So hopefully people are looking to you guys. And I tell people all the time, if you're looking for something like that, go to Empire's website and just check it out.
Yeah. Well, and what I tell landlords, first thing I'll ask them is do we all agree it's a business? When I'm speaking, presenting, and they'll raise their hand. I'll say, okay, so who owns properties? They'll raise their hand. I'll say, okay, of those ones that raise their hand, who has a business plan written out that you follow? There may be one hand. And I'm like, well, do you see why? It's a business. You understand that part of it, but you're not doing the second part. But yet we know 1 out of 3 landlords gets into some lawsuit for something every year. So is it by chance or is it by design that these landlords are failing, or by lack of design, I should say, that they're in these positions? Because, again, when we did this, we had a 30% eviction rate. We'd go off the gut, the old, hey, well, he seems okay, and came from a good reference, like, the people did that you referred. So let's talk about the breakdown of doing the background check, because just, for full disclosure, you do all of our background checks at Empire.
Right.
And we hover at about a 1% eviction rate. We are very strict. I don't know if we're the most strict or we're up there, but I would say we're pretty strict.
And that's one of the things, when you're talking about 1,000 properties, I don't know if the listeners understand that that's 1,000 single-family homes.
Yes,
we're not talking about one apartment complex with 1,000 units.
This is houses.
Right, houses with air conditioners and driveways and all the things that...
Everything that goes on with it. There's a lot that you have to get a certain caliber person. And... not that there's anything with low-end rentals, but we have some $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month rentals.
Right.
Different clientele, different challenges, right? But everybody needs to be checked equally.
Right.
Right? And we can talk about that. But what we learned is, and this is what I tell owners when I talk to owners, the last thing I want to do as the owner of a management company is take someone else's problem, like a bad tenant, put them into your house, and now they become our problem, because we're the ones that have to answer to you and say, we picked wrong.
Right.
And that's a problem,
And that's the difference. And property management companies are generally managing that property for somebody else. They have to have those safeguards in place. Mm-hmm. Well, why you as a home-based landlord, why do you not take those same measures to protect yourself and your investment? I tell people all the time, If you have, let's just say on the low end, okay, I found a good deal on a property, 40 grand, and I buy my first rental property. If that's the case, chances are you haven't even bought a car that costs that much. You know, that's probably going to be the biggest investment you've ever
It's normally the
made.
second biggest investment besides your primary residence.
You know, so why would you not protect that? Why would you even trust what comes out of somebody's mouth without seeing it on paper? We've seen so many horror stories, and we usually get them after the fact. You know, they call us and go, here's what I went through. Can you help me?
Absolutely.
And it's like, yes, we can help you.
Yep.
So that's the thing, is having that process in place. It also gives you an out. So I have a process.
Yep.
I'm sorry, you don't meet that criteria. If I rented to the next person outside of this criteria, I would be wrong for doing that. Everybody has to qualify the same.
Well, just that right there is something that a lot of landlords don't understand, that you have to have set qualifications,
Right.
written down policies, and everybody has to be treated the same.
And home-based landlords typically, you know, they're not on the radar like a real estate broker or somebody
Correct.
like that. So they will go off the rails a little bit and try to use their gut feeling or try to make a decision based on things that they shouldn't be making decisions
yeah.
on.
And I tell people, you know, when I talk to landlords about this, and they'll say, well, I own the house. I say, you own the house, but you don't own the business that's running inside of that house. You own the structure, which is 4 walls and a roof. That structure is not a business model. That's like buying a warehouse going, Shazam, it should be making me money today.
Right.
It's not going to do anything unless you put a successful business in it, right? And I tell them, you making wrong decisions like this, you put that person in the property, that person now has rights. And they
Yes.
have a lot of rights. And getting them out is not always as easy as getting them in.
3 months of rights if you can't catch them in person.
Absolutely. And again, they know what they're doing.
And they know they're being evicted. What do you think they're going to leave that property like?
Exactly.
We've seen them. I used to do HUD cleanouts too. And when somebody's having to leave and they're not wanting to, they are not going to do you any favors. They're
No.
going to steal every light fixture, every doorknob, and what are you going to do about it? Come and get me. You know, what, are you going to garnish my check? Find
Exactly.
me.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that really, you know, having that process in place. And so the 3 basics, if you're not going to do anything else, at least run a credit report, a criminal report, and an eviction report.
Okay.
And those are simple services. And where most home-based landlords, where their mindset is thinking, is they're thinking, oh my goodness, $35, $40 for a back on every applicant? What if I have 10 applicants?
Yeah.
Don't pay for that yourself.
Yeah.
Charge that back to the applicants. If they don't have some skin in the game, then you're going to get every bad applicant that's applying for free, hoping that you're going to approve them.
And if they say they don't have the money to pay for an application, that's a red flag.
Red flag. Am I going to be fighting for the
Is
the
this
rent?
something downstream that's going to be a bigger problem?
And not to, you know, I understand people go through hard times and live paycheck to paycheck, but are you really in a position right now to rent a single family home and you can't afford the application fee? If you've got a husband, a wife, and a 19 or 20-year-old, you know, you could potentially be looking at $100, $150 for the application fee alone just to fill it out.
Yeah.
That is a qualifying aspect. So if you're a renter and you're going out there and you're telling your landlord, what? I can't afford that. I've got $13 in my bank account.
It's like,
guess what? You just unqualified yourself.
Exactly.
So-
Because all you're doing is you're pushing the problem downstream, that now once they get into your property, it is a bigger problem.
Man, it's a huge problem.
So let's talk about some problem scenarios that are going on that you've experienced.
Well, in the 10 years I've been here, you know, talking about seeing the changes.
Yeah.
One of the biggest changes is the amount of grow houses, the amount of meth labs, the things that people will do. Do you think they're going to buy a house to do these things in? Like, let me buy my own house and risk losing my property.
Yeah.
No,
Seized
they're going to
and-
do it in your rental property. And when they find a single family home-based landlord that has no criteria,
Really? That's what they're going after, huh?
oh my goodness, guess what? You are it, buddy. And they're gonna pull up and they're gonna want to pay cash for 6 months, and we'll give you, you know, we'll pay 6 months cash at the halfway through the lease again, and you know, it's just, and if you never go check that property,
Yeah.
you don't know what you're getting into. But that's the kind of things that you're at risk of.
Sure.
You know, you're at risk of not getting the rent paid and things like that. But there's a much bigger risk. And let me tell you, if you get a meth lab in your house, or you know, any kind of trap house where they're distributing cocaine or
drugs.
anything like that, any kind of
Hazardous
drugs,
material,
hazardous
yeah.
stuff. Now you're talking hazmat and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah.
So now let's say that happens. Okay, now you've got the property. that you haven't made any money on, that who knows what shape it is, because we've seen them gut the walls, we've seen them tunnel down through 2 electrical lines.
I was going to say, they do a lot of electrical rewiring.
Unbelievable. And they'll be gone by the time, if you don't know it, they'll do what they need to do, and they're moving on to the next landlord, and you walk into a house and you're in tears because your investment, you're going to leave this for your kids' inheritance, whatever the case may be, is totally trashed. I mean, these are things that they need to be thinking about this serious, because now you've got the investigation process. How long is that going to take? You're not getting the property back until it's done. Then they're going to have some requirements of what you need to do to that property before somebody else can live in it.
And I know it's not cheap to get it back up to par as far as just the hazmat side of things.
If they've knocked down walls and everything else, I mean, yeah, the hazmat side of stuff, that's generally on the landlord. You place these people in the property, clean it up.
Well, I had a funny story. So I had a property over in the southeast. This is probably about 15 years ago in our heat of owning properties when we were landlords. And I had a phone call one morning from a detective, and he says, "Do you own the property on such and such?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And he says, "Well, I'm Detective so-and-so." And he says, when we did the raid on the house this morning, we found a semi-truck full of a hijacked semi-truck full of vodka. We found weapons. We found this. We found that. And I was like, "Did you say that you just raided my house this morning?" And he's like, "Yes, sir." So as this unfolded, it was a fence house, right? They were just storing stuff there. And what he told me, he said, "We appreciate you cooperating. Any information you can give me, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Absolutely. I'll give you, whatever I can, I'll help you with." And he threw in, "And we have the ability to seize your property because it was used for illegal means." He says, "I'm not saying we will because you're cooperating, but we have that option."
Right.
I was like, point taken. Good to know.
Yeah, definitely. They have that right, and you're talking vehicles and everything. And just to give you an idea, I know people think, oh, this ACUTRAQ salesman is telling us all these horror stories.
They are true, man.
Let me give you one. Last week.
Okay.
So last week, the neighbors call one of my clients and tell them, "Hey, we think something funny is going on in the property." And they're going to take the next step to run the background check that you guys do now.
Oh, okay.
So just so you know,
good.
Cost is usually an option.
That's right.
And so we will give you the basic if you want the basic, but there are better ways. So anyway, he goes over there, and as soon as he opens the door, he knows it. He knows. It's just the pungent smell, like, oh my goodness. So, and this guy's telling him, yeah, well, you don't have a search warrant, so come back later when you do. Well, luckily, he's ex-military, has people that are on the police force. He called, got some advice. They said, "Let us get a narcotics unit, just to come out there and check it out." He said, "Well, I'm staying here, and I don't want to start seeing stuff come out of the house." And so they were right on it. They came over there. They didn't even have to get close to the house. They said, "Okay, we're going back for a search warrant." They went and got the search warrant and found 2 rooms that were full grow operations, had been completely set up for commercial grow operations. One room was where they whatever they do with the cocaine and mix it with to get it ready for the street and all that stuff. And then they found another closet that was full of nothing but, ARs, handguns, things like that. So these guys they'll have free room and board for a while after this. But yeah, luckily the neighbors were watching, but these are things that, some of these applicants are so good that, this guy had fake ID, fake past landlords, everything. It really looked really good on paper that would have been hard for anybody to catch. And this goes back to one of the things that you guys do that very few people have stepped up to the next level of service, where we check the property. Who owns that property? Yep. The names that he put down look legit, but had those properties been checked to see who owns the properries, they would have known right away that, okay.
Why? Because we've been caught before where someone's lying and we caught it and we're like, interesting. Okay, well, we got to work. There's a workaround, right? Now you got to block that hole.
Applicants will lie, and they're getting better with technology.
Yeah.
The paycheck stubs, and that's one of the things where home-based landlords. Let's get back on home-based landlords. Home-based landlords don't really know the difference. So, without somebody like us, without somebody that knows what's going on, an applicant can say, well, there's no reason to run my credit. I'll just run it and bring it to you. Okay, well, they run their credit, and then they run it through a PDF program where they can rearrange it, change it around. It looks great now.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you've got a 700 credit score
it's so
and all
funny.
these other things.
And I've had some owners say, well, he's just going to bring me his credit score. And I'm like, why would you do that? That makes no sense. He's like, well, it'll save some money. I'm like, it may save you pennies compared to the dollars it could cost you. Like that,
right.
Is that your policy? If that's your policy and procedure, maybe you need to change it. They go, well, no. I'm like, well, then don't do it if it's not your policy and procedure.
Right.
Stick to the rules.
Yeah, that's the thing. And don't differentiate from those rules, no matter what their story is. But yeah, that's there's so many things, so many variables that go into it without those policies and procedures and without skimping on the background check. You know, do what you feel you need to do to protect that property. And really, the biggest thing home-based landlords think, well, if I'm going to charge a $50 application fee, I'm going to lose all my applicants. No, you're not going to lose all of them.
You're going to get the good. You're going to keep
going to
the
lose
good
the
ones.
ones that are unqualified.
Exactly.
And the ones that can really afford it have no reservations of hitting that application, paying for it, waiting on the results, and moving in a property. And that's really stepping up. And I think we upped y'all's application fee. You guys charge $65 now per applicant.
Yeah, I don't even
And
know.
we've gauged it, and it's like, has there been any pushback?
No, I mean, I think our days on market is like 17 days. I mean, which is like
17 days
record.
with a 1% eviction rate.
Yeah, I mean, and we tell owners all the time, just because someone's in there doesn't mean it's not empty.
Right.
So just don't rush to put someone in there because you put the wrong person in. Now you have a 3 or 4 month vacancy and a make ready.
Right.
And the biggest thing I think a lot of landlords don't factor in is the mental stress that goes when you're evicting a bad tenant. Just thinking about it, dealing with it. Anyone that's gone through an eviction, especially if it's been a bad eviction, it's not the money that causes you. It's the back and forth thinking. What do I do? Is this right? Is this wrong? That's the biggest. We get so many owners that come to us and go, you know what? I don't know what I did, but I messed up. Here, take this and please fix it for us. And we have to, we'll do the eviction. We'll go through it.
Right.
But it's not a good thing, and it is preventable.
Gut wrenching.
And there is a way to go about it. And you guys do an amazing job. So there's different services out there, right? So there's you guys, and there's the other one that's just a Smart Move, I believe.
Smart Moves, yes. And we have some really neat things coming down the pipeline for Smart Moves. We've been developing a program for about the last 6 months. Luckily, Smart Moves allowed us to partner with them. They know what we do in the home-based world. And we've typically always pushed our home-based landlords over to Smart Moves because for our main program, you really have to be a property manager. We have to do a site inspection. We have to get contracts, things like that because of the volume and the security and all that stuff. So home-based landlords that don't generally know the liabilities that come along with having a credit report in your house or, that's the thing that the credit bureaus are worried about are, okay, you've got a home-based landlord, you've got friends, family, children's friends coming in, and that data could be potentially breached. Identity theft generally comes from somebody close to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And so covering those bases, which Smart Moves does a great job of, but they've allowed us to partner with them. And so within the next month, we're going to be launching tenant screening for landlords.com.
Okay.
Because it's just that. And what that's going to allow them to do is have the same program that you guys have. See,
Nice.
Right now, Smart Moves, Experian Connect, these other things don't have a way for us to call landlords or verify the homeowner of the home that they're putting down as their past residence.
Right.
They're saying they rented this home from John Doe on 123 Main Street, and then you pull it up and it's Sandy Johnson. And
Right.
you're going, hey, bud, I don't see John Doe anywhere on this property. Can we get together and talk about this? And then you start realizing, okay, they're lying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they never paid anybody, and they're not going to pay me either. And they're trying to slide by, and they will. If you think applicants aren't going to lie to you, you're sadly mistaken because they will lie before they'll tell the truth. And
so let me ask you this: where do you think landlords normally make the home-based landlords? Where do they make the mistake?
the biggest mistake.
The biggest. What do you?
Biggest mistake a home-based landlord will do is stand there and listen to the stories and befriend their tenants. This is a business, and it's just like a corporate environment. You know, it's great to know the people you work with and all of that, but if you're in a leadership position, you start befriending the people you work with, it's going to make it really hard to fire somebody when you need to and to be the person that you need to be without that separation there. And so there needs to be no tolerance.
Right.
I'm your landlord. It's a privilege for you to live here. It's great that's your backstory, but now I'm going to go home and look at the data on paper, and I'll make my decision based on that.
How many landlords do you think get the information and choose to ignore it?
Too many.
Is that a common?
I have seen it even with my own family that has rental property.
Yeah.
And I'm telling them, guys, I teach this.
Like, don't do it.
Here, I've looked at it.
And the data is actually telling them a story, right?
I'm telling you, this person has paid nobody. Look at this and this and this. Do not do it. And then they do it. And then 2 months later, it's hard for me to get it out of them. How'd that go? How'd that work out?
They don't want to talk about it, right? And,
no.
What I have found is, being a landlord myself is every single time, I'm going to say probably every single time or close to it, every time I bend the rules and I would do something, let's say a tenant can't do this or they want something special or you're not running it the way you kind of create the processes and procedures in an incubator, right? And sometimes we create these as more of a reactionary where we say, okay, well, this happened, so now I'm going to put a plan in, and that's reactionary. It's not proactive, you're reacting. And so we do these in incubators where there's no outside interference.
Right.
And then we test it in the system. And then sometimes that, as you said earlier, there's emotions and there's people and there's feelings and there's perception.
Compassion.
Yeah. So how would you combat that?
You have to make a decision, just like we were talking earlier. Is this a business to you?
Right.
Or are you in the business of charity? Because if you're doing charity work, more power to you.
Nothing wrong with that, but know what it is.
Know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And biggest mistakes, let's talk about them. Application fee, not charging one.
Yep.
Getting emotionally involved with the applicant, or getting physically involved with your applicant or your tenant.
That would probably be bad too, I would guess.
We had a guy that I found out about, and this was in Fayetteville, and come to find out, he was the one supplying his tenants with drugs and things like this and partying with them, and got one of them pregnant unbeknownst to his wife. And these are the type of things that if your guard's not up, if you think that tenant didn't try everything in the book to not have to pay rent?
Yeah.
She tried it all. And now look where he's at. These are real horror stories that, no pun intended, but these are real stories that landlords need to avoid. And if it takes us pounding this in their head through podcasts, through websites, through everything, do you want to have a return on that property? And those are the biggest things, not charging an application fee and listening to the stories. If I could just reiterate that enough, that everybody has a story. I have a story, you have a story, and if we need to make that story sound better to get something, there's
embellish a little if we had to.
Oh my goodness, and it will happen. And if you're a home-based landlord, they're out there right now listening, going, man.
Yeah, I don't like this.
They're thinking about who they've put in their property right now, going,
absolutely.
Oh man.
Yeah, because those red flags, they don't go away. It's like a rock in your shoe. It doesn't go away. It just gets worse.
And it's hard to change. It's hard to change that mindset when this is how you've done your properties, and rented your properties and went by your gut feeling, and you may have had success.
Well, and I think a lot of people, they're sold on the dream of passive income. They take that word passive income to the nth degree,
right,
and they think that means getting something for nothing a lot of times.
Right.
Or they think once I do the hard work, meaning once I buy the house, once I put the person in, the hard work's done. Now I should sit back and collect the money.
Right.
That's not true.
The other biggest mistake, not checking on your property. Just not trusting that they're taking care of it like you would. And you think, well, I don't want to violate their privacy, No, you need to put it in your criteria, again, in your business plan, that I will make quarterly, I will come by to see you, and I may want to look inside the property. I may want to see that the bathtub's not damaged, that that you haven't ripped walls out and put a grow house in there. I may want to see that you haven't moved in your buddy that just got out of prison and all his pit bulls.
Yep. And he's a sex offender. And now you have a sex offender living in your house that no one knows about.
It happens all the time. They have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And so, these things are real life. It really happens, and that's really the biggest thing, is protect your property with everything you can. This is not something that you take lightly. Property and investments, return on investments, you need to protect it. and be conscious of that protection. But changing that mindset to not use your gut feeling, to think you don't know it all, that's the biggest thing. So many landlords that I've called on over the years, man, I have never had a problem. Well, I had one that I called on for 8 years. This is in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And a couple years ago, he called me and he said, man, and I never get this, very rarely. He said, I just want to eat crow. He said, you kept telling me that I needed to run background checks, and I kept telling you that I used my gut feeling, and I've always had success. Well, it only took one meth lab.
It only takes once.
And if you don't know anything about Fort Smith, Arkansas, eastern Oklahoma, southwest Missouri, those are really bad areas for meth. And that's also, too, knowing your area, knowing,
Sure.
it's there. That's where we talk about these variables. If you don't have a plan in place, if I try to drive from here back to North Houston without a map or my GPS or something, or here to California with no map or no plan.
No goal.
I don't have a compass, nothing.
Yep.
What am I
That's the
doing?
strategy.
I'm setting myself up to die on the side of the road in the desert somewhere.
Yeah, north in Canada, and you think you're going to Disneyland in California.
You better have a map, and it goes the same for your investment properties and your business. Get a map, get a plan, and stick to that plan.
So, interesting story. One day I was in eviction court, and I was, waiting my turn to evict a person, which Pete and I were pretty regulars in the eviction court in the day. And we knew we knew the judges, we knew the deal, right? And so, and of course, we had several evictions we had. It wasn't just one. And so I was standing there, and there was a guy that went before me, and the judge says to the guy, well, what's going on? He says, well, I'm evicting this tenant. The judge says, okay, well, tell me the story. He says, he's late all the time. He catches up, and then he gets late again, and then he catches up, and then he's late again. He goes, I'm tired of dealing with it. This is landlording 101 right now, right? I'm thinking, yep, same story, same. And he's like, you know what? He goes, I'm sick of it. He goes, I just want him gone. I just want him out of my property. That's it. And he goes, okay, so you're evicting for non-payment of rent. And he goes, yeah. He goes, okay, let me ask, can I see the lease? So he shows him the lease. He says, okay. He says, I see here that rent's due on the 1st. It's late on the 3rd. And you see, yeah. And he goes, and after that, there's late fees, and then the eviction starts, right? And he says, yes. And he goes, so let me make sure I understand this. Every time that tenant has been late, have you charged and enforced late fees? And the guy says, well, no. He goes, sometimes I do. And then other times, it's due on Friday. It's due on Wednesday, but he'll have it on Friday. And then that turns into Monday. So he goes, I'm trying to be a nice guy. I'm trying to do the right thing, but I want my money. So he's got this whole story behind it. So the judge is sitting there. He goes, okay, so let me get this straight. You enforce the lease contract when you want to. When you don't want to, you don't enforce it. So you think this is a enforce as you want to enforce, not when you don't want to enforce contract. He says, let me explain how a lease works. A lease is a bilateral agreement. That means if they don't perform, you have to perform. And if you don't perform, you, sir, are voiding the contract, and you are setting a precedent.
Right.
Next question I have for you is, do you treat all your tenants the same? And he was like, what? He goes, do you do the same for all tenants? And he started, backtracking, and the whole courtroom was just, saucer-eyed, going, holy shit.
I'm next,
right? And he says, you need to learn that this is a business, and you need to run it like a business. You sign a contract. That is for both parties. Case dismissed.
Right.
Try again. And I was like, wow, like this, I don't know if he had a bad day.
Yeah.
But that was a very valuable lesson that I realized, okay, you know what? First of all, what you do for one, you do for all.
Right.
You let one slide, you better let them all slide, because now it's a fair housing discrimination. It's other issues. Next thing I learned is that when you are doing this, you have a contract. We don't have the rights. And so the way I equate that nowadays when I'm talking to an owner or a landlord, I tell them, if you were the CEO of a company, right? Let's just say that you interviewed to be CEO, and you said, hey, Steve, you've got 15 properties and I want to be the CEO of this business. And I say, okay, do you have any experience? Nope, never done this before. Okay. Have you educated yourself in this? Nope, never took an education class in my life. Don't even know the laws. Okay, well, this is a heavily regulated industry, but you've never taken a class, you've never done anything. Nope, don't know anything about it. I go off of my gut, and I don't have any procedures, and I don't have any policies, and I'm not accountable to anybody. Would you hire yourself if they told you that?
Man.
You wouldn't, but yet you do it all the time. And I say the challenge is you are not being accountable to anyone.
Right.
You maybe need to be the one who needs to be fired. You can't fire yourself because you're quote unquote the owner, but you could be the problem.
Right.
And chances are, I'm being nice, but the reality is normally the landlord is the problem, because they are not running it by policies.
We're saying things that people don't want to hear.
They don't want to hear it.
This is the brutal honesty. If you're running your properties that way, you're going to lose. And that's, go back to that other guy. You may be successful for a while. It will catch up with you, and there will come a time where it will be detrimental to your finances.
Absolutely. And hopefully it's not just one. Hopefully it's not all of them. It doesn't encompass them all, because, you know, the number one reason landlords are sued is security deposit disposition. Yeah. And so, you know, when I talk to landlords, I'll ask them, I'll say, do you have a policy or procedure? Because this is the number one reason why landlords are sued. So that would mean to me, okay, this is probably something you need to put some eyes on. So what is your policy? And they go like, what do you mean? I'm like,
right.
Well, you need a policy, right? Do we agree? Yes. Okay. But you don't have one. No.
So what do you go back to when they dispute?
What do you go back to when they dispute?
And when you show up in court with no policy,
yeah,
you lose.
You lose. And you know, what we do, and you know a lot about what we do in our business, and this is what I tell landlords is, you know, when we are having the initial conversation with the tenant, you need to, number one, be very business minded and brutally honest, and you need to let them know what your policies are.
Right.
So, you know, what we do is we take about 150 pictures of the property pre-ready, pre-move-in. We do a move-in report. We know exactly how that property looks when that tenant moves in.
Amazing process. That everybody should do that.
Everybody should do that. Then what we do is we sit down with the tenant when they're signing the lease, and we explain to them, listen, we just took 150 pictures of this property and we have a report. Now, this is to benefit you, Mr. Tenant, because if down the road you move out and we say you broke that, you can go back to your move-in report and say, oh, no, I didn't. That was broken when I moved in, or that was already damaged, or that was dirty, whatever the case may be. But this is actually a benefit for you.
Right.
Now, we also have a itemization sheet. And that itemization sheet shows what exactly we're going to deduct at a minimum from the security deposit for things that are damaged. Whether it's a light bulb that's $2, a lost key that's $25, a hole in the wall that's $75, a room that's dirty, these are all minimums. But we explain to them, and they have to initial this sheet when they're signing. And this is kind of the setting of expectations conversation.
Yes.
And we explain to them, listen, when we move out, we're not going to just pick things. We're going to go through with another exact report and the exact same way that we take pictures. And then we're going to compare. How did it look when they moved in? How does it look now? Is it wear and tear, or is it damage?
And these are things that that landlords can do themselves. You know, there's third-party apps and things for this, but it's not rocket science.
It's not. We're not moving earth.
You have
here.
a camera on your phone now. Make a folder for that property.
Exactly. And it's just having the policies. And what's the most important thing we explain to the tenant, and this is from our lessons, is we explain to them, listen, if you can't, you know, rent's due on the 1st, it's late on the 3rd. We start paying late fees and eviction on the 4th. This is a global setting in our software. We have no control. This is how it runs. If you cannot do this, you probably should not rent from us, because not only will we evict you, but we're going to send you to a debt collection, and they're going to come after you for what's left. This is nothing personal.
No tolerance.
No tolerance. So we tell them, you know what? If you don't think that this is something you can abide with, we'd rather you just pass now, because let's just save ourselves a headache. And we've had a couple of tenants go, you know what? I don't think I can do this. And we say, well, that's fair. We'd rather let's part friends now and go, hey, no harm, no foul. Because once we get and start dancing, we're going to have expectations, because the owner is running a business. We, you know, and a self-landlord is running a business. You have forecasted revenue that you want to make. You are forecasting at least 1 year of return.
You know, and let's talk about why these things are so important. Because, I mean, people should do this with every aspect of your life.
Absolutely.
You're getting to handpick the tenant that you want by the criteria that you put in place, and you enforce it. As long as it's not, you know, violating any laws, then put it down. Get ridiculous. You know, get ridiculous with what you want and what you expect out of your tenants, and stick to it. Yeah. And you will eliminate a lot of the problems.
Well, and one of the things is we tell our tenants, we gave you professionally cleaned carpets. We expect professionally cleaned back. That's not you going to Home Depot and renting a machine. Right. That's a receipt from a professional company. And we will even give you the number of our guy, and he'll give you a discount. But if you don't do it, we're just going to deduct that from your security deposit, because our goal is to turn that property, in pie in the sky the next day to get rented. We know that's not realistic, but that is the expectation. And I think the biggest challenge a lot of landlords have, home-based landlords, is they don't set proper expectations from the beginning of saying, listen, we run a business. We will give you everything you need. This is what you can expect of us.
Right.
This is what we expect of you.
Amen.
And the challenge is they don't do that because they go, well, I don't have a policy. It's like before you even buy the rental property, create the policies. Buy our manual. Our manual has everything in it. Selfmanagemyproperty.com. You can buy the manual right there. It's super cheap, but it's got years and years of what we do on a daily basis. It saves you thousands of dollars and hours of headache and stress. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge that I see investors have.
And that's the hard part too, when you're trying to educate people. You know, they want to know, you know, what qualifies you to educate me.
Yeah.
And knowing y'all's story, and I tell this story so many times. Every week I tell this story because what you guys went through in trying all of this, from buying the single family, the multifamily, the HUDs,
you name it, man. We tried them all.
Everything, and to get to this point, so. You know, it's not like you're just asking them to buy something. There is valuable content that will save you headaches.
Absolutely, man.
And the same way with us, you know, it's the cost of what you'll spend putting these things in place will make your property successful. And it's the ones that think they know how to do it and have never had anything to do with real estate or property management. They're just setting themselves up for failure. And so I hope they're seeking this stuff and looking for it. Because if you don't think there's variables that go into property management, you are going to get hit with a brick in the face, and it's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt.
And what happens when that property gets, you know, you have a renter that doesn't pay for 3 months and you have to go through the eviction process, or you get a meth lab or a grow house or anything, the number of things that could happen, it's going to affect your finances. What do finances affect? Pretty much every aspect of your life, from your marriage to your kids to everything.
Absolutely.
And so something that started off as a fun adventure.
Yep.
Let's do this. Oh, great. Let's get investment. You know, it could be detrimental.
That's the fun, sexy side. You know,
Right.
and what I think the challenge a lot of investors have is they have they go into it with the mindset that they need to do it themselves. They think that I need to prove that I'm smart enough. And I think
and they think they're going to save money that way.
They think they're going to save money. And the challenge is they go, well, I live in a house. I can rent a house. Same thing. I mean,
Yes.
I'm just me, but I'm paying my mortgage rent to someone else now. That's all it is. It's a different, and I tell them this is completely different. It's almost like we are at a disservice because we live in a house that we equate the same, because it is like, you know, flying a plane and walking across the desert. I mean, they are completely polar opposite concepts. But we are at a disadvantage because we relate the same. But if you said, I'm going to run a commercial building like a skyscraper, you'd go like, oh, I don't know how to do that. I better get a management company.
Yes.
And if they just said like, that's the standard and that's what you should do because that's what's going to get you insured. Like, for example, let's say that you want to do a 401k or IRA, use that money to buy a rental property. And you can do that. You can take the money out and it's still protected and it goes in and that buys the rental property and then that pays back the 401k. That's a quick answer to it, but that's essentially the IRA. That's how it works. What's interesting is they will not let you do that unless you have a professional management company managing that asset, because they want to ensure that landlord is not going to run it into the ground. So there's all these indicators that tell you to hire a professional. I tell people, you know, when you close a property, you use a title company. That's a professional. That's a form of leverage. When you get a loan, you don't go to the guy in the trunk in the Home Depot parking lot to get his money. You go to a bank. These are all things you do for leverage, but yet the one part that's the most important part, which is getting the money out of it, that's where you don't set up a business model or hire a company, but you don't run it professionally, and then you wonder why it doesn't work. It's amazing.
And people they pull their hair out and stress, and
I was one of them. I did it.
I can only imagine. I mean, you
know our stories.
Yes. And that's the thing, you know, get educated, you know.
Get educated.
In nowadays and time, Google is there. People like you are there. There's so much information out there that if you're not seeking it, you deserve to lose.
Yeah. I mean, well, you guys are here, and you know, we're almost out of time here. It's already been an hour. Wow. It's amazing, huh? So, Jason, if they want to get a hold of you and they want to find out about ACUTRAQ and the new thing that's coming, how do they get a hold of you?
My direct phone number is 479-409-6785. My office out of Houston, our corporate office is in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And our website is ACUTRAQ.com, ACUTRAQ, just the background screening company with a funny name. So.
Yeah, and I can tell you, we fully endorse them at Empire. We manage about 1,000 properties. Without a doubt, that is the most vital success, because it all starts and stops with the right and wrong person. And if you put that right, it's like putting the wrong seed in the pot and expecting you to get apples when you put in a watermelon seed. It is just not going to give you the expectations that you got when you put the wrong seed in there, and you've got to put the right seed because your life, whether you keep rentals or don't, just like your father-in-law, that is the determining factor. And, you know, Pete and I really believe in this strongly. I mean, we created a Facebook group, Landlord Survival Group on Facebook. You can go and join that. There's a lot of investors from all over the world, actually, that are on that group. You can go to our website. That's selfmanagemyproperty.com. We have some video blogs on there. We have some free documents to download on there. I'm going to be uploading more documents for people. And you can get our ultimate landlord survival handbook. I mean, this is the gold of the guts of what we do. If you don't do anything at all, buy that book. At least use it as a reference guide, because in there we talk about how do you screen a tenant? What is Texas property code? What is a fair housing and discrimination violation?
You know, and talking about those violations, one of the other things before we go that home-based landlords really need to think about, disabilities and service animals.
Oh, yeah.
That's another area a lot of people get sued.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's more and more common.
Oh, my goodness, because people will go online and print something. They may have a real doctor's, prescription for the service animal, but they may not. It may just be something they printed online. But how do you ask that without worrying about getting sued? So there's so many variables, and I don't know if you guys cover any of that in there.
We do. We cover.
I had a feeling you did.
There's therapy animals and service animals. There's a difference, and that we cover that. And in the manual, we cover things like what do I need to do to get my property rent ready? What is considered a good make ready that a quality tenant is going to come in and say this is fine? Because if you have a bad make ready, your first impression, and you get someone who likes your property when it's not really ready, that's a problem. So. Yes. Go to our website, selfmanagemyproperty.com. If you want to talk to Empire about managing your properties, www.empireindustriesllc.com. You can go to Facebook. You guys on Facebook?
We are. ACUTRAQ, background screening. You can find us there.
That's with the funny name.
With the funny name, ACUTRAQ.
There you go. And, if you want to be educated on our Empire website, I probably personally have done about 200 video blogs on there. All they do is talk about challenges that landlords have and how to become a better landlord. And this is all geared towards just becoming better at what you do and being better at the landlording. So Jason, again, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate it. I value it.
Love being here.
Thank you. And everybody, thanks for the show. We will see you next week.
That flies by.